70% of adults whisper the same thing. The older you get, the farther family feels, not miles, not cities. Just a widening quiet, a gap at the table, a pause on the phone. You smile, you perform the script. Inside, something pulls back. You notice it at holidays. Familiar rooms feel strange. The stories repeat, but you no longer fit the part. Your laugh lands wrong. Your eyes scan the exits. You leave early, claiming work. You go home heavy and lighter at once. You used to belong without effort. Now you rehearse. You edit your truth mid-sentence. You pick safe topics: weather, work, the dog. You hide the ache behind practiced calm. You are fluent in disappearing. They still love you, you know that. Yet love and closeness are not the same. Proximity is not presence. Blood is not understanding. Home, once a shelter, becomes a museum. You are both artifact and ghost. Memory complicates it. The house holds an older you, softer, smaller. That child still waits for approval in each greeting. When it does not come, the child retreats. The adult smiles wider. The distance grows. You keep asking, what changed? You grew. They remain the same. Or they grew, and you stayed faithful to an old role. Either way, the bridge thins. Words misfire. Silence swells. You eat in the quiet. You wash the dishes. You drive away in the dark. Listen. The numbness is not random. It is a signal. It is your psyche closing the door to rooms that cannot hold you anymore. You feel cruel for noticing. You are not cruel. You are honest. You are not lost. You have been trying to live inside a self that no longer fits. The next part will tell you the truth you keep avoiding. The truth is, the distance you feel is not only about them, it is about you. You thought family would always be your anchor, yet as you grew, you learned to leave yourself behind just to stay close. You laughed when you felt empty. You stayed silent when your truth was burning. You played the role so well that even you forgot it was a role. No one told you this, but the distance began the moment you abandoned the child inside you. You thought peace came from avoiding conflict. You thought love meant shrinking so others felt comfortable. You thought belonging meant erasing the parts of you that did not fit the family mold. Slowly, you disappeared, not because they erased you, but because you erased yourself. Maybe you have believed this lie your whole life, that being accepted requires being small. Think about it. You apologize for being quiet. You apologize for speaking too much. You apologize for needing rest. You even apologize for existing with too much intensity. Each apology cuts a thread to your essence. Each thread lost makes you feel further away. At what age did you learn that your feelings were a burden? Who taught you that silence was safer than honesty? Remember the first time you swallowed your words because a parent's face turned cold? Remember the day you cried in your room and no one came? That is when the lesson sank deep. Not their lesson, yours. That you must bury yourself to be loved. The silence at the dinner table is not just their silence, it is yours. The shallow talks about weather and work are not only their choice, they are yours too. You built the wall from both sides. And now, you sit behind it, wondering why you cannot feel them anymore. But here is the hard truth. You are not weak. You are exhausted. You are not abandoned. You abandoned the parts of you that longed for freedom. You are not unlovable. You just forgot how to show the real you. This is not weakness. It is a pattern. And Carl Jung had a name for it. Carl Jung called it the shadow. The part of you that was exiled so early it forgot it even existed. The shadow is every feeling you were told not to have, every impulse cut off mid-breath, every truth you swallowed so others could stay comfortable. It is the anger you buried under smiles, the grief hidden beneath silence, the longing you disguised as strength. Your family saw only fragments: the polite child, the helpful one, the achiever, or the quiet one who never caused trouble. That was your persona, the mask you wore to survive. The persona is not false. It is a fragment, a thin costume meant for the stage of family life. But when you wear it too long, you forget you are more than the role. The shadow waits behind it. Each unspoken word, each uncried tear, each memory of being told you were too much, too loud, too sensitive, too demanding. These exiled pieces gather like ghosts. They do not vanish. They wait. And when you return home as an adult, you feel their weight pressing from the corners of familiar rooms. Projection is how the shadow tries to speak. You look at your mother's silence and call it rejection. You see your father's distance and call it judgment. You hear your siblings' laughter and call it mockery. But the truth, much of what you see, is your shadow reflected back. You meet in them the parts of you that you refuse to meet in yourself. Individuation, Jung said, is the journey of returning to wholeness. To become who you are, you must turn toward the shadow, not away. You must gather the lost fragments, even when they sting. The distance you feel from your family is not only a gap of time or culture, it is the pull of individuation, your psyche insisting that you can no longer live only as the mask. Think of the inner child, still waiting at the edge of memory, still scanning every interaction for signs of safety. That child learned that love was conditional, that belonging came with a price, and as you grew, you carried that child into every room, into every conversation, into the family dinners where you shrink again without even noticing. When you feel the ache of distance, it is that child whispering, "See me, hold me, stop abandoning me." The ache is not a curse, it is a call, a demand that you integrate what you left behind. This is why, even surrounded by family, you feel unseen. They respond to the persona. They do not know the shadow. They cannot hear the child inside you unless you bring it forth. But bringing it forth terrifies you, because what if rejection repeats? What if silence follows again? So you keep the mask tight, and the distance grows wider. Yet Jung insisted, the shadow is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It holds the vitality you crave, the passion you have numbed, the authenticity you miss. To face it is to risk discomfort, but to ignore it is to remain a ghost in your own home. Look at the mirror of your family, their judgments, their distance, their silence. Each one is a thread connected to your shadow. Each one is an invitation. The distance you fear is not a wall. It is a doorway. Behind it waits the self you exiled. So the question is not only, why am I so far from them? The deeper question is, why am I so far from myself? And what if the gap you feel is not a curse at all? What if the distance is not the end, but the beginning of something you have not yet named? We'll come back to that. What if the distance you fear is not the pain itself, but what the pain is hiding? You think separation means loss, but what if it means discovery? A threshold disguised as emptiness, a silence that conceals a voice you have never let yourself hear. You sit at the table, the laughter sounds hollow, the words skim the surface. You wonder why you feel absent in the very place that shaped you. But pause. What if this absence is not absence at all? What if it is space? Space carved by the psyche so something new can breathe. The child inside still waits. The shadow still lingers. The mask still tightens, yet beneath it, there is a pulse. A whisper too faint to catch unless you lean closer. The whisper does not come from your family. It comes from you. It says, look deeper. There is more here. Imagine the distance as a door. Closed, yes. Cold, yes. But doors are not only barriers. They are passages. And when one appears, it means something beyond is waiting. The ache you carry may be the handle in your hand. So ask yourself, what if the loneliness you feel with them is not a punishment, but a guide? What if the silence is the map pointing toward the room where the lost parts of you still live? We'll return to that. You sit with the silence and call it distance, but distance has layers. It is not just the gap between you and them. It is the gap between you and the self you once left behind. That is why the room feels heavy, why the conversations skim the surface, why the very people who know your history cannot seem to touch your heart. The distance is not only theirs, it is yours. Think back. The earliest memories. A dinner table filled with voices. You wanted to speak, but the words tangled in your throat. Someone spoke louder. Someone teased. Someone looked away. You swallowed your truth. It seemed safer. That is where the gap began. Not in adulthood, but in childhood. You learned to protect yourself by disappearing. And the more you disappeared, the easier it became to feel like a stranger in your own home. As years passed, you perfected it. The polite smile, the nod of agreement, the mask that kept peace. You told yourself you were avoiding conflict, but really, you were avoiding rejection. Every silence, every shallow exchange became a ritual of survival. By the time you reached adulthood, you were fluent in absence, present in body, missing in essence. Jung wrote that what you do not make conscious will appear in your life as fate. Look at the pattern. You return home, and the old roles return with you. You sit in the same chair. You wear the same expression. The child inside you looks for warmth. The adult inside you hides the ache. The cycle repeats, and each time the distance feels wider. Dreams often tell the truth the waking mind resists. You may dream of the old house, rooms half lit, doors locked, windows closed. You wander hallways that seem endless. You hear voices, but they are muffled, as if spoken through walls. Sometimes you see yourself at the table, but your mouth will not open. Sometimes you find a mirror cracked, reflecting a version of you that feels both familiar and strange. These dreams are not random. They are messages, symbols of the distance you live with daily. The locked door is your unspoken grief. The cracked mirror is the fractured self you present. The muffled voices are your truth, swallowed until they can no longer be heard. Jung believed symbols are the language of the unconscious. They do not lie. They show you what your waking self refuses to face. And what they show is this: the distance is not a wall. It is a wound layered with silence, expectation, and fear. You fear being too much. You fear being rejected. You fear being unloved if you show your whole self. So, you retreat. And in that retreat, the gap grows. But here is the paradox. You long for closeness, yet closeness requires being seen. To be seen, you must step out from behind the mask, but stepping out risks rejection. So you choose safety, and safety costs you intimacy. This is why you feel more distant as you grow older, not because love vanished, but because you kept yourself hidden longer. Consider the small rituals, the way you check your phone under the table, the way you prepare neutral answers before they even ask, the way you laugh at jokes that bruise. These are not harmless habits. They are the ways you tell yourself, I cannot show up as I am. Each act is a brick in the wall. Each brick makes you harder to reach. And yet, the ache remains, because a wall does not erase the need, it only hides it. The need to belong, the need to be held without shrinking, the need to be loved as you are, not as the role you perform. That need does not disappear, it grows louder. It rattles the locked door in your dreams. It stares back from the cracked mirror. It waits at the edge of every silence. What if the distance is not proof that something is broken? What if it is proof that something is alive in you, demanding recognition? The shadow you carry is not the enemy. It is the container for all you left behind. And when you return to family, it rises, it presses, it whispers, see me, bring me back. The discomfort you feel is the shadow knocking. You said you are afraid of being seen, but what if you have simply never met the part of you that deserves to be seen? The ache of distance is not punishment. It is invitation. It says, step closer, not to them, but to yourself. Only when you reclaim the hidden pieces can you bridge the gap honestly. Otherwise, every gathering will feel like theater. Every embrace will feel thin. The child inside still waits, not for their approval, but for yours. To be recognized, to be welcomed back, to be told you were never too much. You were always enough. That is the ritual waiting beneath the silence. So sit with the distance. Do not run from it. Ask it what it wants to show you. Ask the dream what the locked door conceals. Ask the shadow what it holds in its hands. This is not about blaming family. It is about unearthing the lost parts of you that long to return. And if you listen closely, the silence shifts. It is no longer empty. It hums. It points. It waits. It tells you there is more than absence here. There is a doorway, and on the other side is the self you have been searching for. The distance you dread may not be the end. It may be the beginning of transformation. But how do you step through that doorway? How do you move from silence into truth, from mask into essence? That is where the ritual begins. You wonder how to cross the distance, how to turn silence into presence. The truth is, there is no quick bridge, no perfect conversation that dissolves years of masks. What you need is not a script, but a ritual, a transformation, a way of meeting yourself again so you can meet them without disappearing. Jung called it individuation, becoming whole, not by erasing the shadow, but by inviting it into the circle of your life. Think of it as a ritual of return. Every ritual begins with recognition. You cannot change what you still deny. So the first step is to name what you feel, not in judgment, but in clarity. I feel distant. I feel unseen. I feel like a role, not a self. These are not confessions of weakness. They are markers on the map. Each one lights a small torch in the dark hallway of your psyche. The second step is invitation. You cannot fight the shadow into silence. You cannot cut off the child within. You must welcome them back. This may look simple, but it is profound. Sit in quiet. Picture the younger you, the one who felt too sensitive, too needy, too much. Call them by name. Tell them, you are safe now. I will not abandon you again. The ritual begins here, in reclaiming what you once exiled. The third step is expression. You have spent years muting yourself. The mask is heavy with swallowed words. To heal, you must speak. Not necessarily to your family at first, but somewhere. Write the unsent letter. Whisper the truth into the night. Let the anger breathe. Let the grief find voice. Each word released loosens the knot. The more you express, the less the shadow must scream. The fourth step is boundary. Many believe closeness means endless access, that to be family is to say yes to everything. But individuation requires edges. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors that can open and close. Saying no does not break love, it preserves it. Every time you honor your limit, you honor the self you once abandoned, and each time you do, the distance changes shape. It becomes less about fear, more about choice. The fifth step is presence. When you do sit with family, notice your breath. Notice your body shrinking, your words rehearsing. Then pause, drop the script, choose one sentence of truth, not an attack, not a speech, just truth. I feel quiet tonight. I miss deeper talks. I'm learning how to show more of myself. These are small flames, but small flames light rooms. The sixth step is reimagining. Rituals are powerful because they transform symbols. What if the dinner table is not a battlefield but an altar? What if the silence is not rejection but space waiting for you to fill it with something authentic? Change the symbol and the psyche shifts. Instead of seeing distance as proof of failure, see it as the stage for your return. The seventh step is practice. Individuation is not a single breakthrough. It is daily, small acts. Choosing not to apologize for existing too loudly. Choosing to rest without guilt. Choosing to speak when silence would have been easier. Each act is a stitch. Slowly, you sew yourself back into wholeness. And remember, rituals are not meant to be perfect. They are meant to be repeated again and again, until the act becomes part of you. Each return to family will test you. Each conversation will tempt the mask. But each time you notice, pause, and choose differently, you step further into transformation. Imagine the scene. You walk into the old house. The roles wait at the door, ready to wrap around you. But this time, you breathe. You carry the child in your arms. You greet them as yourself, not only the persona. The conversation stumbles at first, but you stay present. You notice your fear, you notice your strength, and something small shifts. A thread reconnects, the distance softens. Healing does not always mean closeness. Sometimes the ritual leads to clarity, that some family bonds cannot meet you where you are, that love exists, but intimacy has limits. Individuation does not guarantee harmony, it guarantees wholeness. It teaches you to stay with yourself, even when others cannot. That is freedom. That is adulthood. That is the true return. And what of forgiveness? It is part of the ritual too. Not forced forgiveness, not the hollow kind that erases wounds, but the slow forgiveness that comes from understanding. They could not give what they did not know. They could not see you because they could not see themselves. This recognition does not excuse, it frees. It lets you stop waiting for the impossible. And in that release, you reclaim your power. The ritual of transformation is not about fixing them. It is about meeting you, again and again, until the self you hid becomes the self you live. Jung said, "I'd rather be whole than good." Wholeness is the goal. When you gather the shadow, when you speak the silenced, when you hold the child, you become whole. And in wholeness, distance loses its sting. Picture it, you at the table, the laughter still shallow, the silence still thick, but inside a new presence. You are no longer a ghost. You sit with yourself fully. Whether they see it or not, you see it, you feel it. That is the ritual complete. Not a spell, not a miracle, a practice, a way of living from the inside out. So when you next feel the ache of distance, remember, it is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the doorway into the deepest work of your life. The ritual has already started. The only question is, will you step through? If these words have stirred something in you, do not let it fade into silence. Write it down. Not for me, for you. The ritual is not complete until you give it form. Until you declare to yourself, I am here. I am whole. I will not abandon myself again. You have carried the weight of distance for too long. Now it becomes a vow to bring back the child you left behind, a vow to speak at least one truth, even in rooms where silence feels safer, a vow to honor the shadow, not exile it. Healing is not about erasing the past. It is about standing with every part of you and saying, you belong. If you feel this, mark it. Let it live in the comments as a promise to yourself. I choose to return to myself, or I will not leave me behind again. This is not for applause. This is not for anyone else. It is your signature on the page of your life, your reminder that individuation is not a dream. It is a daily choice. And if you need a companion on this path, remember, you are not walking alone. Every soul here carries a shadow. Every soul longs for wholeness. Let this space be a small echo of that truth. The journey has just begun. But there is still something you have not seen. Distance from family is only one face of the ache. The deeper question is this: why do you still feel lonely, even when surrounded by people? Why does the silence follow you into friendships, into love, into the very moments where you should feel closest? The truth is, the gap does not end at the family table. It travels with you, into crowded rooms, into marriages, into nights where the bed feels cold, though someone sleeps beside you. The same shadow waits there, the same child still watches, the same mask still clings. This video was only one chapter, a step into the hidden corridors of your own psyche. You have begun the ritual of return, but the journey continues. There are still doors unopened, still symbols unexplored, still truths you keep tucked in the dark. So ask yourself, what happens when the shadow follows you beyond family? What happens when distance shows up inside intimacy itself? That is the question waiting in the next chapter. If you felt seen today, stay with this path. Do not let the ache send you back into hiding. Follow the thread. It will lead you deeper toward the next truth your soul is asking to face, because this is not the end. It is only the threshold, and beyond it, something vital still waits for you.